In every age, from candlelit monasteries to hidden chapels and war-torn fields, the gentle sound of beads passing through holy fingers has echoed across time, a rhythm older than empires, a whisper stronger than swords. The Rosary, though simple in form, has been the ladder upon which saints climbed toward glory. Each bead, a rung of grace. Each Hail Mary, a footstep toward eternity. Imagine Saint Dominic, kneeling upon the cold earth, his eyes aflame with tears and fire. The world around him seemed to crumble, heresies spreading like shadows, hearts turning cold. Yet in that darkness, the Blessed Mother placed the Rosary into his hands as a torch of light. From his lips rose the first chains of prayer that would bind heaven to earth. The saints who followed him, Francis of Assisi, Catherine of Siena, Thérèse of Lisieux, Padre Pio, all grasped those same beads. They were not ornaments of piety. They were weapons of mercy, lifelines of love in the stillness of dawn. When the world sleeps and angels keep watch, countless saints have begun their day with that humble circle of beads. The Rosary became their heart's dialogue with God, a steady current of grace pulsing through the day's labor, suffering, and joy. For them, repetition was not monotony, but melody, the heartbeat of the Mother echoing in their own. The Rosary taught them how to see the face of Christ hidden in each sorrowful mystery, to taste the joy of Bethlehem in every act of love, to endure their Calvaries with the strength of Mary's yes. When the saints suffered, they clung to it. When they triumphed, they raised it high. It was their banner in battle, their comfort in trial, their anchor in storms. To hold the Rosary, then, is to hold what they held, a thread woven through the centuries, linking mortal hands to immortal hearts. It is to join the unbroken company of those who have walked before us into the light. And as we take it up today, we take our place among them, apprentices of holiness, heirs of a prayer that has crowned saints and conquered despair. In this episode, we journey through those luminous lives, the men and women who carried the Rosary as their secret fire. Their stories remind us that sanctity is not far away, but as near as the next bead we hold. From the deserts of persecution to the quiet of convent walls, the Rosary was their bridge from earth to heaven, from sorrow to song, from darkness to glory. The year was 1208. The air in southern France was heavy with fear, heresy, and confusion. The Albigensian heresy had poisoned countless souls, since Saint Dominic, wary, barefoot, and aflame with love for the truth, walked from village to village, pleading for hearts to return to Christ. Yet his words, though holy, seemed to fall upon stony ground. One night, broken by grief and fasting, Dominic retreated into a forest near Toulouse. There, beneath the silent sky, he cried out for mercy, for the world, for the Church, for light to pierce the shadows. Hours passed. Then, through the stillness, came a radiance brighter than dawn. The Virgin Mary appeared, clothed with the sun, her mantle filled with stars. Her eyes shone with a love both tender and commanding. "Dominic, my son," she said, "the weapon I bring is not of steel but of prayer. Preach my Psalter, the Rosary. Through these mysteries, souls will find my son again." And so began the legacy that would shape heaven's history on earth. Dominic rose with renewed fire. With the Rosary in his hands, he preached not arguments, but mysteries, the joyful, the sorrowful, the glorious unfolding before the people the life of Christ as seen through his mother's eyes. Hearts that had been deaf to doctrine wept under the power of grace. The Rosary became a sermon without words, a gospel prayed in rhythm, a chain that drew souls home. It was no coincidence that victory followed. In the Battle of Muret, where the Christian army faced impossible odds, Dominic's followers prayed the Rosary through the night. At dawn, a miraculous turn of battle brought triumph to the faithful. From then on, the Rosary spread like wildfire through the Church, the weapon of choice for the humble, the devout, and the desperate. For Dominic, it was not merely a devotion. It was a mission, the call to restore faith in an age of forgetting. And for every saint who came after him, that same call echoed. Take up the beads. Preach with your prayer. save the world through Mary. When we pray the Rosary, we echo that same forest prayer of Dominic, the cry of a soul that refuses to give up on grace. His vision lives on in our hands, our homes, and our hearts. Through those simple beads, the Queen of Heaven continues her mission, and the world, still wounded, still searching, waits for those who will answer as Dominic did, with prayer, with courage, with love. There are moments in church history when heaven and hell seem to stand face to face, when prayer becomes not mere words, but a weapon forged in fire. Such was the life of Saint Padre Pio, the Capuchin friar whose soul was marked with the wounds of Christ, and whose hands, bleeding yet serene, clutched the Rosary as his constant companion. Padre Pio often said, "The Rosary is the weapon for these times." To those who knew him, this was no metaphor. He prayed it ceaselessly, moving from one set of beads to another, sometimes praying dozens upon dozens each day. His brethren would find him walking in the dim corridors of San Giovanni Rotondo, his lips moving in rhythm, his eyes aflame with a love that seemed to see beyond this world. Visitors would whisper that the friar's Rosary was never idle, that he prayed it even in sleep, that the beads seemed to pulse with unseen life in his grasp. And perhaps they did. For Padre Pio's battles were not fought with words or theories, but with the mysteries of Christ and Mary pressed against his suffering hands. He was assaulted by demons who sought to tear him from peace. The walls of his cell would shake, his body bruised by invisible blows. Yet in those hours of darkness, the Rosary became his fortress. He prayed through every agony, the joyful mysteries when hope felt lost, the sorrowful when pain seemed endless, the glorious when heaven's dawn felt distant. One evening, a young friar, trembling, asked him, "Father, how do you fight the devil?" Padre Pio lifted his Rosary, its crucifix catching the flicker of candlelight. "With this," he said softly, "with the Rosary, the Mother of God has never failed me. There were miracles too, moments where the world brushed against eternity. Soldiers returning from war claimed that Padre Pio's prayers had saved them from certain death. Pilgrims arrived carrying the weight of sickness or despair, only to leave restored in body and spirit after he blessed their beads. In his confessional, where lines stretched for miles, penitents found more than forgiveness. They found peace, often because he urged them to pray the Rosary daily, as though entrusting them with a key to unlock heaven's mercy. For Padre Pio, the Rosary was not a devotion among many, it was the heartbeat of faith itself. Each Hail Mary was a breath drawn in the Spirit, a reminder that God is near, that Mary walks with her children through every valley of suffering. The beads, worn smooth by his touch, became a bridge between heaven and earth, between wounds and healing, between fear and love. He once told a group of pilgrims, in times of darkness, "Cling to the Rosary as you would to the hand of your mother." That image, simple, maternal, eternal, captures what every saint has known, that when we grasp the beads, we are not alone. Through Padre Pio, heaven reminded the world that sanctity is not found in comfort, but in constancy, the perseverance to keep praying even when God seems silent, to hold on when the night grows long. His life was proof that the Rosary is more than prayer. It is participation in the battle for souls. And today, as the world trembles with wars unseen and anxieties unspoken, the friar's words echo again. Love Our Lady and make her loved. Always recite the Rosary. Yes. For those who carry the beads with faith as Padre Pio did, no darkness is final. The Rosary prayed with love still parts the clouds, and through it, the light of Christ returns. If Padre Pio wielded the Rosary like a sword forged in silence, St. John Paul II carried it like a shepherd's staff, guiding a restless world toward peace through the tender love of Mary, his papacy. One of the most luminous in modern times was marked by devotion to the Rosary so deep that it shaped the very rhythm of his days, his travels, and even his final breaths from his youth in war-torn Poland. Karol Wojtyła learned the Rosary not as a ritual, but as a refuge. Amid Nazi occupation, when churches were shuttered and priests slain, The young seminarian clutched his beads in secret. In cellars and attics, under the weight of fear, the steady cadence of Ave Maria became his heartbeat of resistance. It's a silent defiance that proclaimed, "Evil will not have the last word." Decades later, as Pope John Paul II, he carried those same beads across the globe, from the snows of Krakow to the heat of Mexico, from the grandeur of St. Peter's to the humble chapels of Africa. Wherever he went, he invited the world to rediscover the Rosary, not as a prayer of the past, but as a compass for the modern soul. In 2002, he wrote his apostolic letter, Rosarium Virginis Maria, calling the Rosary a prayer of great significance, destined to bring fruits of holiness. He added a luminous gift, the mysteries of light, inviting the faithful to meditate on Christ's public ministry, his baptism in the Jordan, his first miracle at Cana, the proclamation of the kingdom, the transfiguration, and the institution of the Eucharist. Through these mysteries, he gave the world a radiant bridge between the centuries, linking the devotion of the saints with the needs of the modern heart. Those who saw him in prayer describe a sight both majestic and intimate, the Vicar of Christ, head bowed, beads in hand, whispering each Hail Mary as if speaking directly to the Mother. He called Totas tuas, totally yours. The words were his motto, his life surrendered to Mary, whom he believed was at the center of God's plan for peace. When an assassin's bullet struck him on May 13, 1981, the feast of Our Lady of Fatima, the Pope later declared, "One hand fired the bullet, but another guided it." He attributed his survival to her maternal intercession, and in gratitude, he placed the bullet in the crown of her statue in Fatima. It was an act both humble and cosmic, the Pope acknowledging that the Queen of Heaven had shielded him, that the Rosary he so loved had indeed saved his life. He became, in the eyes of millions, the Pope of the Rosary. In every homily, he urged the faithful, "Do not be afraid to take up the Rosary once again. It is a prayer that brings peace to hearts, to families, to peoples." He envisioned a world healed through this chain of grace, where each bead would become a link binding humanity together in divine love, even in his final years. As illness stole his strength, the Rosary never left his trembling hands. In the flickering light of his private chapel, the once vigorous athlete of faith now prayed as a frail pilgrim nearing home, but the peace on his face spoke volumes. The world watched as he completed his own sorrowful mysteries, his suffering united with Christ's. Glorious. When the news broke of his passing in April 2005, countless cameras captured an image that would move the world. The Pope's Rosary resting quietly on his folded hands. It was more than a symbol, it was his final homily. He had carried the beads through every joy, sorrow, and triumph of his life, and now they carried him into eternity. For John Paul II, the Rosary was not only a devotion, it was a mission, a path for a wounded world to rediscover God through Mary's maternal heart. His voice still echoes across the years. The Rosary, though clearly Marian in character, is at heart a Christocentric prayer. It has all the depth of the gospel message. And so through him, the Rosary became not merely a tradition of the saints, but a legacy for the ages, a living invitation for every believer to join hands with Mary, to walk with Christ through every mystery of life, and to find peace not as an idea, but as a person, Jesus himself, in the great silence of eternity. One can almost imagine the sound of the Rosary still rising, not from earth this time, but from heaven itself. A rhythm of love, a symphony of intercession, flowing like light through the communion of saints. For though their earthly journeys ended, the saints never ceased to pray. Their rosaries, once whispered in the shadows of suffering, now glow like constellations in the kingdom of God. From the hidden cell of Saint Dominic to the fevered infirmary of Padre Pio, from the papal chapel of John Paul II to the humble homes of nameless believers, one golden thread has bound the centuries together. Ave Maria, gratia plena, has become a footstep on the path to heaven. Each mystery, joyful, luminous, sorrowful, glorious, has been lived, breathed, and fulfilled in the lives of those who dared to take the beads and make them their lifeline. The saints carried the Rosary not as an ornament, but as a weapon, not as a ritual, but as a relationship. For them, it was the tender bridge between their weakness and God's mercy. They knew that when the world trembled, when darkness pressed close, when reason could no longer explain the suffering around them, the Rosary spoke in the pure language of love, a language the Mother of God understands perfectly. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux once said that even when she was too tired to meditate, she would simply hold her rosary and let her heart rest in Mary's gaze. Saint Bernadette kept her beads in hand as she endured pain in silence. Saint Teresa of Calcutta prayed it as she walked through the streets of Calcutta, whispering to her sisters, "Cling to Mary. She will lead you to Jesus." Each of them knew the rosary is not about perfection. It is about presence. When the saints prayed, they entered into the mysteries not as spectators, but as companions, walking beside Christ in his joy, sorrow, and glory. And as they prayed, they were transformed. Fear gave way to peace. Pride dissolved into humility. Pain became a participation in redemption. In this way, the Rosary became not merely a prayer of the saints, it became the school of saints. For every Hail Mary uttered with love is a chisel shaping the soul into the likeness of Christ. And now, across the veil, they pray still. Saint Dominic, radiant with zeal, intercedes for a church often weary. Padre Pio, serene and steadfast, prays for those locked in battle with despair. John Paul II, the Pope of the Rosary, prays for a world that has forgotten how to kneel. And Mary, the gentle Queen of Heaven, gathers these voices, presenting them like flowers before the throne of her Son. The saints' rosaries have not fallen silent. They have merged into a celestial chorus that envelops the earth. Every time a believer on earth takes up the beads, heaven joins in. Each Hail Mary is echoed by the voices of those who now see what they once believed in faith. Each mystery we meditate upon is illuminated by their love, a communion across time and eternity. Imagine the moment when a soul, at life's end, crosses the threshold of eternity, still clutching their beads. How the saints must rise to greet them, Dominic, Pio Thérèse. John Paul II, their faces shining with the joy of recognition. You carried it too, they might say. You held the chain of grace that led you home. And there, in that eternal light, the mysteries are no longer mysteries. The joyful becomes everlasting joy. The sorrowful melts into divine compassion. The glorious expands into unending praise. And the luminous, oh, how radiant, becomes the very light of God that fills every heart and every home of heaven. This is the destiny of the Rosary. To begin in trembling fingers and end in eternal song, so let the saints' example guide us. Let their voices, mingled with Mary's, call us once more to prayer. Take up your beads tonight, perhaps weary, perhaps uncertain, and whisper the first Hail Mary. You are not alone. The same beads once held by saints now rest in your hands. Their faith runs through the thread. Their love lives in every decade. And as your voice joins the timeless chorus of heaven and earth, you too are carrying the Rosary toward glory, bead by bead, breath by breath, until all the mysteries of love are complete in Christ.